Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to my beer pairing presentation. My name is Joe Seebeck, and let's just go ahead and dive right into this. I've selected five, I think, distinct beers that will pair really well with the dishes I've chosen for my pairing today. I don't like to focus a lot on the coloration of a beer because it can fool you. Case in point, I recently had a beer that was called a white stout. It looked everything like a lager, but it had all of the coffee and chocolate quantities or the qualifications that you would expect from a really dark looking stout, yet it looked like almost like a Budweiser. So coloration isn't something that I focused on here in the selections of my beer. Where I decided to pay attention to more than that was on the alcohol, of course the ABV, but also the alcohol flavor that you get from these beers as compared to the dish that you're eating. Also, I I tried to look at the bitterness of the beers as compared to the dishes. Too much bitterness on an already acid-heavy dish, and you're going to blow your guests out of the water. Not enough to contrast with a super sweet dish, and it's going to taste like you've just forked in a mouthful of sugar and then followed it up with sugar water. Not really what you're looking for when you're trying to uh, showcase really fine beers like I believe I've chosen here. So first on the list is the Flensburger Pilsner. The Flensburger Pilsner comes from Germany. It has a fairly low ABV, but where this Pilsner is different from a lot of your American Pils or Pilsner style beers is that its bitterness is a little up there. You'll notice this from the very first minute you stick your nose toward the glass of a Flensburger Pilsner. We'll get into a little bit more of that here in a little bit. Next on the list, I chose the Tücker Helles Hefeweizen. This is from the Radeberger Group in Germany. It again is a little lower on the ABV scale. It comes in at about 5.3%. And it's very low on the bitterness units because it's a Weizen beer, it's a wheat beer. It's not going to be very bitter at all. And again, I chose this beer for a specific reason. Next, I chose, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this, but it's the DuPont Saison from the Brasserie DuPont in Belgium. This has a little higher ABV. This one's 6.5% ABV, and it comes in at 30 IBUs. I really don't pick up on that much bitterness in this beer, but that's what they say, so we're going to stick with the 30. Next on the list, I picked the Dogfish Head Midas Touch Ancient Ale from Milton, Delaware. This beer rings in at 9% ABV, but it doesn't have that much bitterness to it. This IBU scale is at 12. Once again, chose this for a specific reason. So finally on the list, you'll see Cigar City's High Life IPA. Now this comes from Tampa, Florida. I have nothing but good things to say about Cigar City and the beers that they brew. This beer has about a 7.5% ABV, but here's the kicker for this one. It rings in at 75 on the IBU scale, chosen very specifically for the premises of a dessert beer in this pairing. Excuse me. And again, we'll get into that once I get to the dessert course. Moving forward, we'll start with the amuse-bouche. This was the two fried sauerkraut, two lightly fried sauerkraut balls that you mix with a hush puppy batter. You're going to dry and finely chop your sauerkraut. You're going to mix it in with the hush puppy batter. You're going to season it to taste. And then you're going to serve it with honey mustard. Now, the reason I chose the Flensburger Pilsner, which is served in a Pilsner glass, is because the flavors you're going to get from the sauerkraut balls are going to be an interesting blend. You're going to have a lot of acid from the sauerkraut itself, and even in the pepper and the paprika and maybe some of the other things that you want to throw in with the batter, plus you're frying this. So that's going to have some umami flavor to it all by itself because it's a fried food. It's almost, in fact, it is German comfort food. Then you're going to dip that into a honey mustard, which is going to have your sweet and a little bit of acid mixed in with it already. The reason I chose a Pilsner that has such a high IBU is to combat a lot of the sweet that you're going to get from the honey mustard, the hush puppy batter, and you just want something that's going to contrast with all of that. I didn't want to go all sweet with this. So I think that hop heavy, bready head is going to, it's going to work well with the initial taste of the hush puppies. But then you get into some of the more intricate flavors of the Pilsner, and I think it mixes well with the honey mustard and the seasonings that go into it as well. Next on the list is the appetizer for this. I chose 3 to 4 raw oysters served on a half shell. The first thing you're going to do with these is you're going to top them with a fresh squeezed lemon juice, and you're going to very lightly top them with some horseradish, and if you need it, a little cracked black pepper. Some people enjoy that, some people don't. You can substitute a hot sauce if you like. I prefer to start with the lemon and the horseradish and then move on from there. I paired this with the Tucher Helles Hefeweizen, which is served in a Weizen glass, for the very reason that it's low on the IBUs. You're already getting a lot of acid and even bitter from the lemon, the pepper, and the oyster itself has a very unique flavor quality to it. Again, it's a little higher on the alcohol scale than the Pilsner, but it's not going to overpower the flavor of the oyster. I think this is a really good mix. Next, we move on to the salad course. This one is a little bit more delicate. I decided to mix spinach, cabbage, and romaine lettuce, tossed in with black olives and cherry tomatoes. You throw in some chopped avocado, blue cheese crumbles, and some strawberry. You're also going to serve that with a balsamic dressing. Now, of course, all of these pictures are stock photography. This salad isn't representative of exactly what I wanted to do. My initial plan was to cook all of these meals and present them in a video that way. COVID, Corona, the holidays, everything got in the way of that. So we have to go with stock imaging here. But the pictures I chose represent the closest variation of what I intended for the meals. I paired this salad with the DuPont Saison. Now the Saison itself is 6.5 on the ABV scale. So you're going to taste a little bit of the alcohol on this, but that's what you want. You're going to want that to pair with some of the acid and just the earthy tones of a salad, as well as it's going to help accentuate the balsamic dressing that you're going to use with this salad. It's also a little higher on the IBU scale because I think this salad it's going to have a lot of umami flavors to it. It's going to have a lot of decent balance between acid and base. We want something to really make the fruit pop, and you're going to get that with a Saison, especially the DuPont. The very first thing you taste with this beer, even when you put your nose to the glass, is that those fruity tones from a farmhouse ale. These are very sessionable beers, and they're meant to be served, to blue collar workers that have just spent a hot day out in the sun. This is a very relaxing beer. I think it's a very relaxing salad, but it still fulfills all of those flavors that you're looking for in both of these dishes, and well, this dish and this beer. Moving forward, we have the main course. Now, again, this is stock photography. This is not the way I would present this dish. It looks incredibly different when I prepare it. I just wasn't able to do that here. We have the ale simmered bratwurst, which you're going to finish after you've cooked it about 2/3 of the way in boiling beer. You're going to move it to cast iron and finish it off there. You're going to top that with a sauce that consists of Jägermeister that's been cooked down, chopped onion and horseradish to just really accentuate all the different herbs and flavors that naturally appear in a Jägermeister. And you're going to burn off the alcohol in the cook, so you don't have to worry about that. But the flavors are still going to be there, and the thicker you can make this, the better it's going to be. You're going to garnish, you're going to serve this along with a traditional German pancake, which consists really primarily of nothing but potato and onion. You're going to season it to taste, but the two big flavors you're going to get out of this are root vegetable and a little bit of bitter from the onion because it's essentially a 50-50 mix. Now this is exactly why I chose the Dogfish Head Midas Touch Ancient Ale. The Ancient Ale, it has a 9% ABV, so you're going to really rise above the umami flavors and those base flavors that you're going to get from the potato, and from the bratwurst itself is spicier, but because you're boiling it in an ale, you're going to lose a little bit of that tart, sharp flavor from the protein itself. So the Ancient Ale, with its ABV and a little bit of bitterness, about 12 IBUs, it's going to replace that, but it's also going to really complement this dish because you're mixing in your potatoes, your onions, your bratwurst, a lot of different seasonings from the Jägermeister and the horseradish and onion. You don't want to overcomplicate this. This is a very simple beer that has really good qualities to it, but you don't want to overwork the palate. You don't want to overcomplicate a dish if you don't have to. And I think that this beer really complements that to the T. Moving on, we have our final course here, the dessert. Now, again, I mentioned at the beginning of the video that I chose the Cigar City Highlight IPA for a reason. That reason is I floated it into a bowl of mango gelato. Mango gelato really doesn't have a whole lot going on but sweet to it. It's cold, it's sweet, it's got, your fruit flavors to it. And you're going to mix in an ale, so the fruit's going to complement each other right away. But those incredible 75 IBUs that come from a Cigar City Highlight are really going to set apart from the sweet of the mango gelato, and it's going to, these two these two items together should not work, but they do incredibly well. And in fact, this actually ended up getting put on the menu as a dessert for one of the restaurants I worked in here in town. An incredibly good dish. Should not work together, but it does, especially if you throw a little of expressed mint on the top of it. It just adds that last little touch of aroma to the dessert that you lose a little bit of when you mix the beer with the gelato. But it all comes together and congeals into this incredible symphony of taste and aroma, and just, it's a shock value dessert. Nobody's going to think of pouring beer into an ice cream and making a float out of it, but this works really well together. So finally, I want to thank you for taking the time to look at my video today. It's been fun working with all of you in class this year. I know it isn't exactly the class we wanted to have. Oh, sorry. It isn't exactly the class we wanted to have, it being completely online, but I think there was still a lot of opportunity here. The literature was great, and I look forward to seeing you guys in classes at Rosen in the future. All right, well, thank you very much.